Season 3 of The Pass is here. I know it's long overdue. We have a new intro. We still got the same content. Well, actually, it's a little bit of new content because there's new things going on in 2019. So buckle up. We got a lot of things to talk about on The Pass. Episode 249 of The Pass is here. We are one episode away from the big 250. I am in limbo of thinking whether we should do that one going into July or wait until July and get that one going. I'm going to figure that out over the next couple of days. But regardless, it's your boy BT. We are back with another week of content, sports, news, video games, tech. Wow. All I can say is wow. There are a lot of things that have happened since we last recorded. I am here to tell you all, if you do not have time to sit and listen to every bit of this show, you're definitely going to want to keep up and try your hardest to get the news as it hits, because there were so many transactions from the time I hit stop on last week's show. So I'm not going to bore y'all half to death with a long-winded, blindsided intro. We're just going to go ahead and go right on into it because that's what you all are here for. And to start off, we have officially hit the turning point in FIFA with the Women's World Cup. Our teams have been placed for their respective matches in the knockout phase. So far, Nigeria has been knocked off, Australia and Cameroon. Nigeria and Cameroon were two teams that made it in because based on each group, you had two teams that were automatically going to get in. And then there were two other teams that were given seedings to even out to get the proper 16 for the round of 16. USA is playing right now. Brazil actually lost yesterday as well. When I was coming in to prepare for the podcast, USA was ahead. USA had scored their first goal. And I happened to kind of turn it on the game for a quick second to kind of have it to see what the score was. And coincidentally enough, or to see if anything was going to happen in that time period, Spain did indeed score. The goalie got out pretty far and gave away just a smooth kick, mid-right, just a simple goal. So right now the score is tied in the 18th minute. Later on, Sweden will be playing Canada. So those are your two matchups right now. As I mentioned, with most of these matchups, it's not going to be group stages. So if a team loses, that's it. They go home. And that's kind of what it is right now. So that's your quick and condensed FIFA update. I put them backwards, but I'm putting them backwards for their intended purpose. I did promise, and I did luckily get to watch, so I feel good. I did get the highlights from week 1 of Big 3. So Big 3 has been extended this year. There were, I believe, 4 new teams added, which actually makes for a better flair in competition because now you get 2 days worth of games. On Saturday, some teams did pretty good. Power was able to, Coutinho Mobley played like he's still in his prime, but this man is like 50 plus getting buckets like it's nothing. The Three-Headed Monsters, who were the runner-ups in the championship game, they were able to beat Trilogy, who is without Rashad McCants, who did confirm he retired from Big 3. He was the first player drafted, and if I'm thinking and remember correctly, he is officially the first player to retire from Big 3. So yeah, the three-headed monsters did lose. Kenyon Martin is their coach, so that makes it an interesting setup. You have the two of the newer teams, Bivoyak and the Enemies. The Enemies did lose. Gilbert Arenas didn't play. Not sure why. Was trying to figure that out a little bit, but I kind of just let it go because that's just wasn't a lot to really put behind it. The Aliens and the Triplets played. Triplets won by 10. This one was a huge game because Joe Johnson went off. I believe Joe Johnson had about 27. Shockingly, even with him being as good of a shooter, he didn't shoot as many 4-pointers, but he did get a lot of good threes off in that game. I like this game too because we got to see Greg Oden show up. And I'm going to say it on my show, on my platform, because I had this conversation with someone and it's relevant to bring up. Greg Oden was not a bust. Let's be perfectly clear. A bust is a player who has played in the league for X number of years, had an opportunity, and just never did anything worthwhile in their career. Greg Oden's issue was injuries, and you can't fault him on that factor. I'm gonna go on a limb and even say it now because we don't know or we're not sure what could happen next year. I won't consider Michael Porter a bust because of health. If he gets healthy and is well enough to play and then never pans out to really getting a spot in the NBA, then we can call him a bust. Like if he's been playing and he actually had some years under his belt. But if a guy is in his career had yet to play a full season's worth of games, that's not a bust. That's just health. It wasn't that they couldn't use him, but I mean, he had issues with his feet, with his knees. His lower body was getting battled. So I just want to get that off my chest before we really get into like the rest of the games that were in action. The Killer Threes won a very close game against Tri-State. They won 54-52. Steven Jackson played, his typical game. Frank Sessions, or Frank Nitti, as most people know him from the Drew League, he definitely showed up, and it paid off for their team. So they did win their first matchup, which was good. And the Ghost Ballers beat the Ball Hogs 50-39. And that's it. That's mainly all the games you had for this week. And next week will be week 2, so we'll update according to those matchups. Now, I will go ahead and make it clear that if I give some of the matchup scores or if I don't give scores, it could be a midweek. Like it just happened to hit this week because of it was on the games were on Saturday and Sunday, and I'm recording on a Monday. I'm potting on a Monday. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it. But that is basically what the Big Three was. Now, what you all probably are wanting to hear, and what you may not even care for, if you're not a sports fan, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you now. This will probably be a 10 to 15 minute breakdown, and I don't want it to be such, but I'm gonna talk about it for the sake of content, and it's something that needs to be addressed. This was one of those unique drafts where we look at a player and we're wondering if in X number of years, will we be talking about this draft class, and or is this player the possible next wave of a up and coming star? Of course, I'm obviously talking about Zion Williamson, who it was pretty much clear he was going to go number 1 in this draft. When you look back at him in high school, the roles were changed over time because you had a player such as Cam Reddish, who was in top 3. Like between Zion, Cam Reddish, and RJ Barrett, their positions shifted throughout the year. We get into college basketball. They all play together at Duke, and it was a very it was a very weird shifting of the gameplay. And I say it that way because Zion was the man. Zion was the guy, the go-to guy, as we talked about a couple months ago. I mean, we literally were talking about the fact that a shoe that he wore just, blew. And it was so bad to the point where the team had to make an urgent decision on getting him shoes specifically made to tailor to his type of game and his body and his build. Fast forward, he breaks out. Ja Morant was already breaking out a little bit at Murray State, but we really got to see it in in March Madness for, I think it was 2 or 3 games. He looked pretty good. He ended up getting the second pick. So I'm gonna talk about this draft, but I don't want to, because it's hard to not be long-winded, but it's also transparent that you have to acknowledge what was seen or what was witnessed. Zion was first, Ja Morant was second, RJ Barrett was third. The question, of course, was whether who would be getting the lottery pick, which we talked about a few weeks ago, was the Pelicans, which kind of displeased a lot of people. But it also was, in hindsight, a good thing because they were able to use this pick in hindsight based on trade value, which we'll get into that in a minute. So here it is. You have, most of these guys getting picked up. I'm confused, but I'm concerned more about Darius Garland going to the Cavaliers because you already have Colin Sexton there. Now, unless you're going to run them as a duo together, that's possible. But him being like, okay, we're going to hand the keys over to him, and if Colin Sexton doesn't work out, we're trading him. That's the only reason I see this pickup occurring. And it's early, but it's still that conversation or that question of like, what was the draft process in picking him up? Jarrett Culver from Texas Tech, we weren't surprised there. Kobe White going to the Bulls is going to be a very big deal. I didn't like the reference because they were like, he went to North Carolina the last time they picked up a lottery pick in Chicago from North Carolina. It was Jordan. I'm like, relax. Kobe White is going to have a very... the NBA, the college and NBA conversation needs to be presented, and I think I always talk about this when this happens. The learning curve is not minor. It's a huge learning curve, even if you're a talented basketball player or a talented athlete. We saw this with many of our stars and great players, even with Steph Curry's rookie year. Steph, I believe, won Rookie of the Year, but it wasn't an easy downhill, coasting process. Now, granted, Blake was hurt. There were other factors behind that, but in full A to Z form, it was, just you have to let the players kind of play it out and learn along the way. Cam Reddish dropped to 10, and I won't say dropped to 10, but everyone's questioning his confidence and questioning his shooting, which was already talked about when he was at Duke. So whether that translates or how that's going to go with Atlanta is going to turn out very interesting. Because right now they're looking at it as the Hawks would have Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, Trae Young. You're looking at the other guy that won the dunk contest, I don't know if he won it, but he was in the dunk contest that jumped over the Tuskegee Airmen plane thing, whatever. Shocker for me, which is a shocker, but it's not a shocker. PJ Washington was the first Wildcat picked up. It's a shocker only because he wasn't a freshman, and two, I as a Kentucky guy, I gotta say, I don't think this past year's draft recruiting group was that good. They were okay, but they weren't great. So you put that on the table. You had PJ Washington there. You had Tyler Hero, who went after him. what's his name? Because I want to make sure I'm looking at the list while I'm not saying it wrong. Keldon Johnson went late. He went to the Spurs. Him going to the Spurs could be a great thing. Now, the question for me now, too, looking at it is, if he's playing a 2, how do you factor that in with your guards, your lineup now? Because we already know DeMar DeRozan's there. It's going to be a shift alignment if he even starts. All I'm hoping and all I'm being transparent and looking for is I just hope he doesn't G League it up. But we'll, see what happens. Kevin Porter was picked late in the first round, which was kind of expected because from my understanding and from looking at it, he didn't really have the greatest rookie. He didn't have the greatest pro day. So if any of you have not heard of it with basketball, and they do this in football too. Your pro day is basically you in the court. You're in the gym, you're at the basketball court, and you have a trainer there who's just having you go through all of your, you basically are showing your package of what you can do. And scouts are there. Obviously, it's recorded, and it's kind of analyzed and put in of where you could possibly land in the draft. Darius Bazley was the big story from last year. If you all recall, he was the kid who was supposed to go to Syracuse. He decommitted, decided he was going to go to the G League, turned around, didn't go to the G League, signed with New Balance, and just worked on his game during that time period, and he was drafted. He went to the Jazz. He was drafted by the Jazz. It's likely going to go to the Thunder. That was my pick. He's going to be your Terrence Ferguson 2.0 in the sense of Ferguson was supposed to go to said college, didn't really have that on the radar. He ended up going overseas, and it all, everything turned out fine for me. And Terrence Ferguson has kind of become a very key role player to Oklahoma because at first we really didn't hear about him, but that changed. Nasir Little with Portland. I hope they know how to use him. I hope he fits in. And I'm using those two terms in that magnitude strictly because they have Anthony Simmons, and they really didn't use Anthony Simmons very well. But I think a lot of it, too, is I don't know if it's youth or it's inexperience or both as to why we really aren't getting the full Anthony Simmons package yet. Because at IMG Academy, he looked great. In pros, his rookie year was an okay year, but it wasn't anything. I don't have the list in front of me, but I would not be surprised if he made the all rookie team, probably second or third. And that's just kind of what it is. So I'm hanging on to the first round of this draft heavily because after Romeo Langford got picked by Boston, it got a little, it was just a draft. And I'm saying that it was just a draft because guys were picked up. A lot of names did make it off the board. Bobo was the big story. He, as they called it, he dipped. He ended up being drafted by the Nuggets. It was the Heat's pick, but they traded the rights for that pick to the Nuggets. Injuries and health are the biggest concern as to why no one was really willing to give him a chance. And that's just what it is. Kyle Guy got picked late. He was from the UVA championships team. And he's going to the Kings. He should fit there pretty good. That would be very strong, having him, Buddy Hield, De'Aaron Fox. I think he's gone, but Willie Cauley-Stein, if he's still there, all of that kind of coming into play is going to really set a huge tone with that team. Now, we're not going to talk about it today, only because obviously we're recording today, so we'll be on next week's show. But the NBA awards are coming. I will talk about who won. I'm going to see if I remember the article I did or the video that I had, the recording of who I picked for those awards. Come back and we'll compare and see how bad or how decent I was with picking up on who was getting what award. But yeah, that's the draft. I mean, like I said, that's so there's let me backtrack. There's the draft and then there's the undrafted. So we had those who were drafted, and you had a list of guys who it was a shock that they weren't drafted, but I kind of saw it coming. The biggest one to me, which is the first guy on this list from the next article, was Naz Reid from LSU. I don't know if it's that he didn't show anything. I don't know if it's his height weight comparison to other players in the NBA. He did end up getting a spot in. He ended up getting a 2-way contract, and I'm gonna talk about this on the show because I don't know if I have before. And someone in my sports group asked this, so I'm always about, as y'all know, if you listen to the show enough times, I'm about educating. A 2-way contract for an NBA player basically means you are with a team, but your primary commitment or your primary time will be in the G League. Now, if you show enough and it really is evident that you want to be in the NBA, they work it out and it's set up in some manner where you're able to get a call up to the NBA and you're on an NBA roster where you can kind of alternate. Like you're typically alternated between the NBA and the G League on occasion because it's going to be the factor of what NBA team you go to and how that team's roster is health-wise. Because there are going to be those times where your team's going to have practically no one on the bench. Okay, let's call up some guys from the G League because each NBA team has its own G League affiliate, which took time because it wasn't initially like that. It was kind of almost like farming in basketball, but now it's a lot more streamlined because there are more kids who come out of college that never hit the NBA floor, but they're in G League time and time again. So yeah, he's with the Minnesota Timberwolves for their G League team and affiliate. So he would be able to play with the Timberwolves, but he's going to mostly be getting G League time and kind of playing accordingly. Now, let's also keep in mind, we still have Summer League. So Summer League can also help him catapult a little bit more towards the NBA or playing with the Timberwolves. But if it's not seen where he really can fit with the team, he'll be in the G League. And there are a lot of guys, it's tough to say it, but it's a reality. And I'm sorry, because, I mean, for Naz Reid to be 6'10", he should be in the NBA. You don't get height very often. And that kind of goes to why one of the other players on the list, Taco Fall, was a shocker. But all of this being said, is just you're going to want to do your best at both levels. So the lineups of the players who have gone, who went undrafted, Jontay Porter, who of course is Michael Porter Jr.'s younger brother. Brian Bowen, if you remember him, he was the kid who played, who was supposed to go to Louisville but never played. He ended up going to like another school, didn't work out. He went overseas and did not get into the NBA. I believe in his circumstance, they haven't given him a team or a spot yet, but he is going to be playing Summer League. So a lot of guys, you're going to see him on Summer League teams for a team that they didn't even have looking at them. Taco Fall, as I mentioned, Luguentz Dort, Shamori Pons, Jared Harper, Dedrick Lawson from Kansas, who I think should have went back, Ethan Happ, Kai Bowman, Terrence Davis, Lewis King, and Zylan Cheatham. All of those guys are undrafted. Some of them have gotten 2-way contracts. Some of them are kind of just waiting things out to see if they'll be able to get on a team's lineup and get some minutes. And that's just kind of where it is. So as bad as I thought it was going to be, that's mostly the draft as a whole. That's kind of what happened and where we are. So it's early. I'm gonna, on the draft picks and the prospect, it's top heavy. but I'd give this draft class a C as a whole. And I'm only giving them a C because a lot of the guys who have been drafted are gonna play, but depending on the team that they go to, they may not get the minutes that they're really and truly expecting. So that makes it a much more tedious process of them being able to prove themselves at the next level. Because some guys aren't even on two-way contracts and they could get drafted in a couple months, be right down to the G League. Kobe White, I think, will be fine. Jared Culver, some guys are going to be good because they're going to want to see what they can show this first year. It's the following year, or it's that once your rookie contract ends, what are we doing with you? Are we keeping you? Are we letting you go? Perfect example now, we're watching it with Dennis Smith. Dennis Smith is with New York. I believe his contract expires after this season, if I'm remembering correctly. But they could also still trade him. Because if they're trying to get pieces in place and they want to get contracts off of their books, those things come into play. So that's our draft analysis. I did better than I expected. It was about 16 minutes, give or take. But hey, I wanted to make sure I didn't leave any key pieces of information out of the discussion. And I'll say one more thing, and this is not really even targeted towards just basketball, but it's life. And I've always said this. 15 to 20 years is transitions. People who watch basketball from the 90s got to remember 2019 basketball is far from what you were seeing in the 90s. It's far from what you're seeing early 2000s. So you have to be, trend with the sport and see how it changes. This trade finally happened. And when it happened, I was like, oh my goodness, I have content and this is going to be the story of all stories, because this story would have occurred back in February during the trade deadline. But there's a personal, you know what? I'm not even going to finagle it. I feel like the Lakers did this move to spite Magic. There, I said it. Me being on this platform and me having the thoughts that I have about certain things, I'm just going to say it. I feel like they did this trade out of spite. They didn't have to do this trade whatsoever. But if they wanted to win, they needed to do this trade. They did not do it under Magic's tutelage or his leadership. So with Pelinka and Jared and Jeanie Buss being there, he said, you know what? Fuck it. We gonna do it. All right, bet. And I know y'all probably like, okay, well, what is he talking about? But if you are reading the show notes or you're kind of reading along, Anthony Davis is now an LA Laker. Preface, he is not officially signed yet, based on they want to make sure they get the deal done at the right point for the benefit of their contracts, along with being able to potentially sign a Supermax player. So Anthony Davis was traded for Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, and the fourth pick, which was DeAndre Hunter. So Hunter, that's how he ended up going to the Hawks, because they also, once the Pelicans got that pick, the Pelicans did another trade of some sort where they relinquished that trade to not. I don't feel like the Pelicans wanted to take a risk at possibly not pelicaning the draft, in the sense that if he was available, they could have gotten RJ Barrett and Zion on the same team. The challenge would have been you would have then had to be put in a position to trade with the Knicks, which the Knicks were not going to nick. Everyone was concerned about the Knicks nicking the draft, and they didn't. So let them be great on this one. Kyle Kuzma was not part of the trade. The trade package was one of the most substantial returns on a single player in modern league history. The deal will be completed on July 6th, which is the end of the free agent moratorium. Assuming that Davis continues his plan to accept his 15% trade bonus of $4 million, the Lakers will have $23.7 million in available salary cap space for free agency. Davis does have the right to void the bonus. He had been requesting this trade since January, and he'd been welcomed. LeBron did post stating that AD was on the way. I'm not going to read all this because it's just more minutia and other information. This article occurred before the draft. So I know I did the draft first, but I'm like, I wanted to go back and get these trades out of the way too because they were big trades. Davis going to the Lakers does not guarantee the Lakers a championship there. That might be why the trade, when it was done with Magic, they didn't want to do it. Because if you really look at last season, oh, this is good. This is where it gets fun. If you look at last season, if the Lakers did do the trade, and let's say Kyle Kuzma was part of that trade, LeBron was going to try to play through. They could have made an 8th seed, a 7-4 8th seed. You then run into the brick wall of not this season, but next season. Not this upcoming season, but when this season coming up ends, whether Davis would even stay. Doing this trade during the offseason worked out because now you get that dialogue and you get the confirmation that Davis does want to stay with the Lakers. If I hear one person put Anthony Davis in the category of any big men that have played for the Lakers, we fighting. I'm just being 100% honest. I only say this because Anthony Davis is a great player. He's one of the top big men we've seen in the NBA. He's had multiple All-Star appearances. He's done his due diligence, all of that. That being said, big men aren't very durable in basketball, period. We learned that with Shaq. We learned that with Olajuwon. We learned that with Dwight Howard. We're seeing that right now with Dwight Howard. Why am I wanting to say 5 years? 2014, carried one. When Dwight Howard was potentially going for an NBA championship with Orlando, that was the best Dwight Howard we got. When the back spasms came, the muscle spasms, all of that, once that all came to surface, shit changed. It was LA. It was Houston. It was Charlotte. It's Washington. And no one's giving him solid contracts. I'm saying all that because I'm looking at it as Anthony Davis is one of your, like I said, he's a dog. I mean, he can play. And obviously, I'm not even being biased because he played for Kentucky, but I like to see Anthony Davis play because he's one of those big men that has a guard mentality. He can shoot, he can pass, he can dribble, which shocks me sometimes because he's brought the ball down, and I'm like, this guy is over merely a 7-footer and has handles. LA, and I'm gonna probably get a lot of flack for this. LA needs a point guard to teach LeBron to play off ball. If they bring in Kemba, I'm gonna be 100% honest. Kemba has to be the alpha in getting LeBron to understand I'm bringing the ball down. If you really look at it with Kyrie and LeBron playing together, even the times of LeBron bringing the ball up, Kyrie was your point guard. Kyrie was going to be the floor general. Kyrie could make his own plays, but you saw it in Boston. He needed help. He really had no help. So you put this situation here now, and you look at what's going to possibly happen during the offseason. It makes no sense for the Lakers to have as empty of a lineup as they are going to have and not put some form of pieces in place to win a championship. The NBA is kind of open right now only because of the fact that Golden State, there's no telling what's going to happen. There's not a strong chance Durant's coming back next year. Klay Thompson could come back, but even with Klay's not going to be playing this season. You still have Draymond, and you have your role players. You have Livingston, you have Iguodala, you got Bogut, but it's an open race. So it's good that they were able to finally get this trade done. I just hope it pays off. That's my bet. That's my cleanest closeout for that portion. Another trade that happened that I still was shocked happened, and it was ironic because it occurred at a very unexpected point. Let me see. This article broke on the 18th, so that would have been last Tuesday, and this one was on Wednesday. Mike Conley went to the Jazz. Now, this is again that telling a story before the other story broke. Memphis was already set on getting Ja Morant. Anyone who was in their right mind kind of saw that one coming. They get Ja Morant, or they were in the process of trying to get Ja Morant. So that meant, what are we going to do with Mike Conley? So they said, you know what? Let's go ahead and pull off a trade. Now, Kyle Korver just got to Utah. It couldn't have been a couple of months. And now here it is, Grayson Allen, who was a rookie, Kyle Korver, Jay Crowder, and the number 23 pick from the draft all go to Memphis for Mike Conley. They wanted to get Conley's numbers off the books too. This trade works very well for Utah because now you're taking pressure off of Donovan Mitchell doing all the work. Donovan Mitchell got screwed out of a Rookie of the Year campaign. We get it. It was a messed up situation. Ben Simmons won it. But in hindsight, they both respected, adapted up, and it was all cool. But anyone who watched the note, really tracked last season, knew that was Donovan Mitchell's rookie. His rookie year was solid. Even to be able to get that team to the playoffs, if you really look at the lineup they had, that was not easy. They're left with Joe Ingles as a shooter. Because now with the NBA requires and consists of a lot of shooting. Joe Ingles can shoot. Conley's going to get Rudy Gobert more involved. We're not sure of who we're going to get out of, I can't think of it, Derek Favors. And that's mostly your lineup. That's your starting five. You got Rubio coming off the bench. You got a couple other key role players. They got some draft picks that they're able to utilize. The question that came, or the story that has kind of caught a lot of attention is, well, now that they have this lineup, are they a competitor for the playoffs or even the championship? They were a playoff-bound team last year. It will help with getting, because now if you really look at it, Conley's considered a veteran. Conley has over 10 years in the league. He has gotten his paper. When you as an NBA player have earned over $150 million for your career, you're at that veteran point. You're at a stage where we're gonna pay you, but we're not trying to pay you crazy. Granted, the Rockets did it with Chris Paul. I digress. I really feel that Donovan Mitchell is going to help Conley out in his, in the pressure. Conley's going to be a very strong tutor for Donovan Mitchell. And before I forget, because I do want to talk about this, because it was petty, but it was funny. There was a lot of tension about Bobo's attire for the draft. Well, I'm gonna do two things on the draft because I don't want to forget this other part. Bobo's jacket, and on his pants he had the web, like the spider web. And I think Rudy Gobert commented on the outfit, and Donovan Mitchell got mad about it, which was kind of funny. But what I like, and I'm mad because I didn't watch the actual draft, but I'm gonna try to go back and watch that part to see if it actually occurred. But in his jacket, he had his dad's jersey, which custom made, which I think is pretty dope. Because his dad was Bobo was 6 when his dad, he was young when his dad passed. So, I mean, you watch highlights as you can, but, his game is 10 times different. And I guess it's that concern of how his game is going to translate to the NBA, but we don't know. But I wanted to bring him up. And then Keldon Johnson was interesting because he wore one jacket for most of the draft. When he finally got drafted, he took that jacket off and had another clean white jacket on to walk towards the stage. Creative, different, but it was something worth pointing out. Back to Utah, back to the reality. Utah will be a top 6. They'll make one of this. They'll get 1 through 6 in the West. I almost want to say 5 through 8 to be fair. Because the West is still stacked. We still have other teams that we don't know what they're going to do. As far as with Dallas, we don't know if Kristaps Porzingis is going to re-sign. There are a lot of things to look forward to from this deal. So that's that. I was unsure of whether I would really give this story attention, but we're here, so let's talk about it. And I'm glad he did this announcement without his father, because it was one of the few moments that made TV valuable. LaMelo Ball is going to play in Australia. He made that announcement on ESPN. I believe he was on the jump. He confirmed that he's going to be playing for the Australian National Basketball League for the Illawarra Hawks. 17 years old. He's unable to play in college due to eligibility. That part was fine. Dad fucked it up because he decided to come out of his mouth and say, I feel like my son is going to be the number 1 pick in the 2020 draft. How? I really want to know how. If he goes and plays overseas, he had better be averaging at least 35 a game. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm being honest. The kid can play. No one's taking that away from him. But to get to the next level and to stick out at the next level, you've got to be ready to play. I forgot this too. Well, actually, we can make it a double blend. LeVar, being LeVar, ran his mouth about how he feels as though his son is going to hit Lonzo is going to make Zion better. I think it's the other way around. But that's another story. Didn't mean to hit that pop on y'all. I don't have a pop filter today. But I'm saying that to say it as he better put his money where his mouth is. LaMelo, if he has a good year overseas, I'd say top 10. Because a lot of teams want him, but It's the challenge of getting him with his father that will be concerning. And I'll just leave it at that. And as a quick update, USA and Spain is tied at 1 at the half. I'm not gonna look at the game while I'm playing while I'm recording it, because it's just not gonna happen. So that's mainly it with LaMelo. LaMelo's going overseas. He's looking to go into the draft next year. How he prospects or how he projects himself for this upcoming season will tell a lot, especially with the other guards who are in the draft class. It's gonna be something to look forward to. So continuing with international play, I guess you could say, Rick Pitino turned down an offer to return as the president and coach of the Greek team Panathinaikos. He did lead them to a championship. He wants to, or he's looking to pursue a career in the NBA. I don't see it happening. Next story. I honestly don't see him getting to the NBA is going to be a tall order. And it has nothing to do with the scandals. It has to do with, if a team is bringing him in, can he be able to coach in the generation of today? I use this example, but it ties into it because it's truth. Lenny Wilkens cannot coach today's basketball. Magic Johnson cannot coach today's basketball. They are both great coaches, a great coach and a great player, but they cannot coach today's basketball. It's a different style of basketball, and I'm not saying it's uncoachable. It's a different culture. Steve Kerr fits for Golden State because Steve Kerr understands that kids wear headphones and play music and are in their little zones and bubbles at a practice. As long as everybody comes together when it's time to play, that's all that matters. That's the transition. That's why if you look at it, that's why a lot of younger coaches get opportunities in the NBA. Frank Vogel has been put in a very hot seat. Luke Walton could not get that team. And I'm going to say this before I continue with this next story. Luke Walton couldn't get that team to the playoffs in those 3 years that he coached. But the last year was the closest shot he had. And because LeBron didn't play, they let him go. And they didn't make the playoffs. I don't see how that's on him. But we'll see what happens in Sacramento. He has a new lineup. For whatever reason, like I said before, they've not really made a big to-do over the allegations. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. David Ortiz was not the person that they were supposed to be going forward in this supposed murder plot. The bullet that struck Ortiz back on June the 9th was meant for Sixto David Fernandez. It would authorities have described as a murder-for-hire plot. Fernandez, a friend of Ortiz who frequents the bar, was sharing a table with the baseball star. Jean Alain Rodriguez, the country's attorney general, said Wednesday he personally interviewed Ortiz. The baseball icon told Rodriguez he had no idea who would want him dead. The attorney general said that authorities believe Victor Hugo Gomez Vasquez, a fugitive believed to be part of the Del Golfo drug cartel in Mexico, orchestrated the alleged hit. Be very cautious of where you go. That is my message I have for y'all today. And I'm throwing the little snicker at the end of it, but I'm being serious. Like, really be cautious of where you go. Because you're going for one thing and then something occurs where they're trying to get someone else, but they happen to you happen to be there. Hopefully the person that did this, they are able to get them, because this whole story just is out of control and confusing all in one. That ends our sports, which was a lot of stuff. I didn't realize how much we had talked about until looking at everything. But now we're going to get into stuff. And all I can say is I don't want to be too long-winded, but I'm going to try to get through each of these stories without ignoring or denying what occurred. And of course, I need a subscription for this story. That is so trash. Now I gotta find another version. Give me a sec. All right, my bad. So I do have a better article. This will be the actual article you will read in the show notes. So I don't want to get them confused. So Toby McFarland's daughter said in her college application that on the soccer and lacrosse field, she looked like a boy amongst girls with my hair tied up, arms sleeveless, and blood and bruises from head to toe. She never played soccer. She didn't write the essay. The essay was crafted by William Rick Singer, the mastermind behind the National College Admissions scandal, and sent to McFarland and his daughter, federal prosecutors said. She got into the University of Southern California. They went over and talked about everyone with the plea involving the college scandal. I promised y'all I was going to get back to the story because I didn't want it to be talked about and we not give it its proper attention. They're finally coming to grips with getting all of it resolved, and now we can put this all behind. One of the singers pleaded guilty. The CEO behind the college admissions cheating scam wanted to help the wealthy, but that's not all. Prosecutors are sitting through mountains of evidence, preparing for trial in some cases, and using emails, recorded calls, and witness testimony to strike plea deals and others. The scams allegedly involve parents paying Singer or his charity to facilitate their child's entry to selective college using two different schemes. Of course, y'all gonna give me an ad when I don't want one. I just love how the internet does this to you. But long story short, it has come to full fruition that they indeed were a part of this, and they're going to be trying to get these people to plead and put this behind them. I don't want to, like, I'm reading over this. Yeah, the guys, it was William Rick Singer. So yeah, that's who they were referring to. So the next story, I'm going to go ahead and update you all now. They changed the name of it for, as they call in the article, DMCA requests. It was initially done as Mario Royale. So anyone who knows Fortnite, who knows any other games, they're doing Battle Royale. Battle Royale is the new wave. Call of Duty. If Rocket League does it, I would be concerned. If NBA 2K does it, I'd be concerned. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Smash, all of you, I'm telling you now, if any of y'all do any Battle Royale based themes or games, you will be on the podcast. I'm not talking shit. I'm being dead ass. But Fortnite, Apex, which was a spinoff from Titanfall, Call of Duty, H1Z1, DayZ, PUBG, all of those Battle Royale trends, someone decided to make a Mario Royale where it's played online. And let me see, because I want to make sure I get to the actual link, because now it has like a different name. It's called like DMCA Royale. Yep. And it looks, it's pretty fun. Like you get, like you want to play, it's preferred or smart to play on an actual computer with keyboard and mouse. You're basically using the keyboard you see the controls, you can learn how to move and everything and navigate. And you're trying to just get through the board first before everyone else. As you go through the board, it's just like any of your typical Mario levels. So if it's Mario 1-1, if you fall into the pit, that's it. Game over. You start over. It starts off with 75 people trying to finish the stage of the classic game as quickly as possible. Mario Royale is a pretty chaotic experience. Once you get into a lobby, you're matched up with as many as 74 other players. You're all dumped in at the start of the stage of Super Mario Brothers. While your opponents will have a faded look to them, everyone in the game is essentially identical and an indicator floating atop your head helps you identify the Mario you control. It'll literally have like an arrow pointing to your person and it says you, and it's written in the Mario font. The experience feels similar to Tetris 99, though much more helter-skelter, because Tetris 99 is a problem. I don't know if I've talked about that on the show yet, but playing Tetris 99 with a group of people is illegal. I'll just leave it at that. The game, like I said, I played it a few times. It's pretty fun. I've watched it played on different streams. It's a fun game. I will admit it's very hectic, and you notice it from the time you start playing it. Dr. Mario, I have gone ahead. If you have an Android or an iPhone, obviously, if you have either of those devices, Dr. Mario's mobile app is available for pre-order. So you can go in, have it pre-ordered, and it will be available in a couple of weeks. They did put a video out kind of showing what the game does and how it's played. It is in a bit of a beta period for Android, but it is available on both iOS and Android. I forgot this article a few weeks ago, and I didn't know that the update occurred. So I'm going to talk about this briefly, but we're going to talk about it because there was a complaint regarding it, and I guess I wasn't aware of how it would be a big deal. So anyone that uses Spotify on your typical on your mobile device may have noticed that there was a rollout in the new look of Spotify. And I'm going to make sure I get my Spotify so I can kind of follow along and hopefully not get any static into the message or into the device as I'm looking this up. So what they did was, if you go to if you go to your library now, what they have is they have it set up as, at the top, it's music and podcasts. And so what you'll do is, if you go to podcasts, it's all of the podcasts that you follow on Spotify. Music, it's any of the music that you have liked or any albums that you have liked. They would all be in this location. Any playlists, they're all set up under this umbrella. Now, I guess there was a problem with the design of the layout, but after using it, I really personally didn't see a big difference. But they did this for a reason, which I'm going to talk about from my personal perspective as to why. No one likes to go through complications to find anything online. And I also have another theory behind this too, but I'm gonna make sure I remember to say it. Well, I'll say the first part, and I'll say the other part first, and then I'll talk about this. If we all remember, a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, I talked about how Apple decided to split everything. You have Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, Apple TV. They already were split on mobile devices. They're not split on computer. You have to go to iTunes to do everything, which sucks. But that's the choice, or that's the way it is. That being said, Spotify is a different monster because Spotify is a one-stop shop. It has always been a one-stop shop. You don't want to split podcasts away from music in Spotify because you're not wanting to. So as a generic thought, you're not going to want to listen to a podcast and listen to music while listening to the podcast, if that makes sense. You're going to listen to the song, and if you want to go and listen to a podcast, that song will stop, and then it's going to play the podcast. So that now goes into what I was just talking about. The interface was changed for a transition of getting those podcasters who are on Spotify exposure. And you also have bigger podcast platforms, or bigger companies, say Obama, obviously Joe Budden. If it's easier to find them under your podcast list than to have to search for it every single time, that makes it more streamlined for the listener and for the end user. Because let's face it, and this is even for me myself, I have not been the best podcast listener. I'm guilty of it. It's not even that it's impossible to do in a day. It's you want to make sure you're getting the proper content from listening to a show and not just rush listening the show for the sake of trying to support. And that's hard to do if you're listening to 40 different podcasts in one day. You know what I mean? So that is something that has to be factored in with how you listen to podcasts. And it's also the same with music. On New Music Friday, which I'm going to talk about in a few, trying to listen to every single song or every single album, you're not going to really give it its proper listen because you're just listening to it because it's there, but not invested in the listen, if that makes any sense. Music is hard to it's very tough to try to shortchange yourself on listening to music. But literally, I mean, like I said, they have it as distinct tabs. In music, you have each has Spotify is rolling out a redesign of your library for premium users, giving music and podcasts their own sections. Each has 3 distinct tabs you can tap or swipe between. In podcasts, you'll have the option to view new episodes for shows you follow and those you haven't listened to, as well as an overview of all the shows to which you're subscribed. The downloads tab, unsurprisingly, includes the episodes you downloaded for offline listening. So if you're an offline listener and you don't want to waste your data, you download it to your device, listen to your show, get rid of it, go on to your next show. Simple. It's similar to what Overcast does, because with Overcast, that's how you listen to most shows. Because as the listener, you would rather have the show available and listen and play it than to have to stream it and go. Because I've gone through stream battles with some podcasts, and it is tough. I've gone through that with Joe's show, where I'll listen to his show, and if Spotify has a moment, or if something happens in hardware, I got to go back to that point and be like, okay, what minute was I listening to in the show? And you can forget, because if you're listening to a show that's a 2-hour show, that can kind of battle you a little bit. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this as far as this availability or this idea. It's not on the Spotify app for the desktop, but it is on the phone. And that's mainly what they're looking at, because it's that mobile convenience. Circuit City did this. H.H. Gregg tried to do this. Radio Shack technically is doing it now. Toys R Us is going to cut it down. We saw this a little bit, but we kind of had to wait it out and see it actually physically occur. Toys R Us is looking to have 6 physical stores, and they're going to have a website. I don't believe we talked about it on this show, but ThinkGeek is about to be gone. ThinkGeek is basically going to be under GameStop's umbrella, because ThinkGeek as a physical business really kind of thrived because of GameStop. And also GameStop needs the support or the business as best as possible, since whether people really want to acknowledge it or not, they're going to go through a herd of business when streaming games becomes the norm. And it's coming. It's just a matter of when and at what point. Following the custom of well-known retailers that went under as a result of leveraged investments and business moving online, Toys R Us is reportedly close to a comeback. According to Bloomberg, a former executive is pitching plans for a chain with locations that are a third of the size of the stores you remember, probably because some of them still remain out there empty and loom, and of course a website. Radio Shack is still around, and while Circuit City stripped down relaunched last year, didn't go quite as promised, it's still functioning online. Based on the report, Richard Berry is planning to open half a dozen locations by the holiday season under the True Kids entity, consisting of the same lenders it owed. That owns the name. An executive of a toy company is quoted saying the industry will benefit from a self-standing toy store, even though competitors like Walmart and Target have expanded their sections. Toys R Us has to find a way to get the money back that they lost when it closed. Filing that bankruptcy hit, going through the full closing and shutdown affected them in more ways than one. Toys R Us fell into the 20-year window that I always bring up on this show. 20 years ago, Toys R Us was a wave. People physically going to stores. People like to see items. They want to try it out. They like the customer interaction, the in and out business. They had pretty much a wide supply of product. Now, most people don't want to go in the store. They want to buy it online, wait to say, hey, it's available in the store, and go pick it up. We do that with food. We do that with everything. If Toys R Us can find the algorithm to keep that form of business intact and still make profit, they have a chance. Because it is going to be the availability of, if we bring out a product, Walmart brings out a product and Target brings out a product, Target and Walmart are going to sell out those products, given. You know that if it's a hot commodity. Some products, and it's tough because we really don't think about it, a lot of products that are in stores have very long shelf life. Just something to think about. And I'm giving this as a consumer conversation, but I'm also just giving y'all just general knowledge to really think about. So that is the gist of the Toys R Us transition. Before we get to Ass of the Week, I do want to go ahead and give a little bit of music update. I don't know. Music was kind of, I won't say all over the place. Music was kind of in this month. Well, not this month, but this week. And it's only because there were a lot of good options that were there, but you had to kind of almost look to find the good stuff. So Lil Nas X, his album did drop, pretty good album. I got into it. It's an EP, but it's a good. The tracks that I listened to was pretty dope. Did not know about Trina's album until I really was looking, and I'm like, oh, Trina dropped an album, and it actually is pretty good. The couple of tracks that I did hear from it, I haven't fully listened to it yet. And it's the important factor, like I said before. Sometimes when you listen into albums, you want to make sure you're listening to an album in the right setting or in the right sitting, because an album can kind of come and go in like no time. And it's just kind of one of those things. Nicki Minaj did bring out a new single. I actually watched the video, which led to the single, and I was like, okay, it's Nicki. I like it, I guess. It's kind of one of those, I don't have a horse in this race type of thing. And Devon Terrell, as usual, dropping new singles. He killed it on this last single he did. So check those. That was what I've listened to for my music session, my AirPod Escape. And I mean, like I said, everything was pretty spot on that I was able to listen to for the most part. So we got 3 asses of the week, because 2 of them go together. Two of them are part of one, rather. And today's passive message is going to be pretty dope, so I'm going to try to condense that as well. We're well past the hour mark, so if you're still hanging around, thank y'all for continuing to listen, because I know the NBA part the draft was going to take up a lot of time. So thanks for being patient, sticking with me through this listen. Marvin Bagley went on ESPN First Take. And I'm probably going to paraphrase a lot of this story, so I want to make sure that So I'll read over this and then we'll talk about it to kind of have some fun. So Sacramento Kings baller Marvin Bagley III is not so officially in battle in rap beef with Portland Trailblazers star Damian Lillard, as the two went bar for bar, dropping diss tracks on social media until the wee hours of Friday morning. Bagley tweeted a link to a track titled "No Debate" on Thursday afternoon. Lillard then responded later that evening with a pair of tracks, the first titled Marvin, another one called Bye Bye. Bagley wasn't feeling it, so he released a rebuttal called Checkmate at 3 a.m. He tweeted it at 2 in the morning. All of this started when Bagley appeared on ESPN's First Take on Thursday morning, telling Max Kellerman he was the best MC in the NBA and that he'd be down to battle Damian Lillard. I won't be on First Take, but if that's what he wants, shoot. Lillard then tweeted. Then after releasing the first diss track, Lillard explained, I was being quiet because I just rap and enjoy my music. But he kept mentioning my name. It's a real rookie versus veteran showdown. Lillard, who is 28, has for years been considered the NBA's best rapper and is likely the league's most prolific artist, with 3 full-length albums available on iTunes. Bagley, who was named to the All NBA All Rookie First Team, wants to show hip hop fans he's no slouch. It still happened as the NBA draft was going on. So who won? Glancing by the reaction of social media fans and active players, as well as memes created at the speed of light, the answer is Lillard. But some said it was a tie. So here's why it's Ass of the Week. Me reading this is a waste of time, but I'm just reading it just to be petty. This was Ass of the Week for me personally because, one, they're two different types. They're both different rappers. They're not even like Damian raps, like true raps. Bagley is more of a chill, laid back, type of music guy. So when it turned into the I'm calling you out or I'm saying that I'm the best rapper, it's true off-season form, and it was coincidental because it's literally the night of the draft or the day of the draft that they're doing this. So when I was, I didn't want, initially I wasn't going to listen for him, but then I'm like, you know what? I got time. I'll listen to both of them. Yes, Damian Lillard is going to be better than him, but he also has been in the game a lot longer. So it wasn't like a surprise, but Marvin Bagley held his own. The Ass of the Week reference for me came in because it was just funny how it all triggered from just a conversation on First Take. And it's like, well, I mean, if you want to smoke, we can go ahead and I can take it to the booth and we're going to rap. And when he did the raps, I'm listening to him. And one of them, when he used the beat, he used the same beat as Duppy. And I was like, oh gosh, like it didn't trigger me, but it intrigued me because it had been a year since Duppy had happened. And I was like, oh no, we're bringing that back. But hey, once it's here, it's not like you can unbring it. So that was why I had that as a solid chew. One of my, well, I didn't even say solid, but that was why it was one of my asses of the week. The other ass of the week is over in Japan. Man was arrested with 50 ecstasy tablets in his possession, and they were shaped like Wario. He was caught. Satoshi Kishimoto was caught with the narcotics. The other two were. So other people were found with dried cannabis and LSD. Kobe Customs told Asahi that the design has been increasing in numbers. It only takes a casual Google search to see what they mean. I can't be the only person looking at this and now wanting a Wario breakfast cereal. Kotaku always does weird segues, but that's another story. Wario, that was the best you had? Now, since no one likes the character and because I'm petty, they should have designed them as Waluigi characters, but that's me. But yeah, as you can see, there really wasn't a lot of ass of the week. I'm not gonna do that. I'm cool. Value those who are here. That's my primary press for Pass the Message today. is to really value those who are in your life. But I'm also going to give a true pastor message, because I did have a conversation with someone and I've learned we do not know how to mentally recharge, because our brain and our mind and our lives are in constant go mode, which I get it. I mean, we've all been there, but once in a while your brain or your mind needs just a break. And sometimes that break could be what could get you out of that possible space. So I've shared, and this is from Forbes, 10 ways. I'm not going to read all of the, I'm not going to read the detail. I'm just going to read the 10 things. And this is a message to pass to everyone. 10 ways you can best use your time to mentally recharge. Pay yourself first. Follow the 2-minute rule. Now, this I will explain a little bit. It simply states that if a task takes less than 2 minutes, then do it straight away. This eliminates procrastination and reduces stress and allows you to stay organized, which grants you time to decompress at the end of the day. If it's a quick task, do it and don't put it on hold. That's kind of what I'm gathering from that. Exercise. Make time for music. Obviously, putting in the headphones, listening to music, or listening to my podcast, or listening to any good podcast that's good for your listening pleasure that provides content. Recharge through creativity. Wake up early. Leverage your commute time to decompress. Focus on small opportunities. Outsource tasks. And don't give up the time you set aside. The last one is going to be important, because this is what I really want to share with the listeners who are hearing this message. Do not make your downtime the time of others if your downtime really needs to be your downtime. Utilize your time and utilize the opportunity you have to do things, because if you don't, you'll find yourself running rampant with nothing to show for it. And then you're frustrated because you wish you had did when you could have done, but you chose not to do. So just utilize that time. And that's what I'm going to leave y'all with today. I hope everyone has a safe, positive, and blessed week. If I personally don't say this to you all, I really pray for everybody who listens. And I hope you all pray for me I hope you all pray for me in your way or in your preference of prayer. And that's all I got. Until next time, y'all take it easy. Pat signing out. Peace. Another episode is in the books. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. As I always share, if you'd like to get into podcasting, you can check out Spreaker.com. And if you're looking to invest in a microphone, or if you're looking to genuinely start with recording, I use the Blue Yeti microphone, but you may prefer to do the Samson Meteor. Just know that if it's your craft and it's something that you're meant to do it and do it well. That's my main thing to tell people about 2019. Do it and be reliable. Y'all take it easy.